Burlesque Stripped Down, episode number 58. Welcome back, my friends. This is Velvet Eau Claire. You know me, as always, I'm your guide through all of the secrets, saucy secrets, sexy secrets, and very often less than sexy secrets of us, the folks behind the tassels. And let me tell you, today we've got some not so sexy secrets because we're talking a lot about failure. So today I have a very lovely human being to share with you, Miss Fifi La Roux. Now, Fifi actually was the winner of a kind of a live raffle drawing that we do every month over in the Burlesque Big Sister Big Brother community on Facebook, which has been mentioned several times in the podcast. So if you've listened before, you might be familiar with that. Maybe you're even in it as well. But every month, Diva Hollywood, she kind of opens up and does this kind of drawing, a giveaway, and anybody in the community can offer something to give away. And I decided to offer up an interview on this podcast. And Fifi, I'm so happy, was the winner of that. Not that I wouldn't have wanted to talk to her even if she hadn't been the winner, but it's just a nice way it gets me in touch with someone that I would not have been in touch with otherwise, possibly. So Fifi was the winner for that. So congratulations, Fifi. And we also discovered as we were having our pre-show chat that Fifi and I, not only are we kind of soul sisters in that she's Irish and I'm half Irish, but I love Ireland. That's like my home. But we also share a birthday, and it just happened just a few days ago. So April 4th is both of our birthdays. The plan was to get this episode out on April 4th on our birthday, but then stuff happened. And then I was like, no, I'm not going to work on my birthday. I'm going to enjoy my birthday a little bit. So anyway, long story short, she's my little twinnie and it's great. So anyway, to bring it all back, Fifi and I talk a lot about some of the unsexy secrets. In particular, we talk about failure, and we talk just so much about what it's like to be a human being in this kind of performance world and how we can, just embrace the unsexiness, even though we don't use it in those terms. We don't talk about it in those terms, but that's kind of the general idea. Now, Fifi and I really got deep on some stuff, man. I tell ya. We talked for over 3 hours, I think, including our pre and post show chat. And just the interview part itself was over 2 hours long. So what I wanted to do, I had a couple different options here. First of all, I thought about maybe just editing it down to get you a normal size. Then I thought about maybe doing what I know one of my favorite podcasts called On Being, what she does, which is she gives an edited version that's a nice shorter 45, 50-minute version. And then she also publishes an unedited version. But then what I decided to do as I was listening, I was like, I don't even know what to cut out. I don't know what to do. So what I decided to do is actually publish this episode in 2 parts. So you are going to get a double dose of Fifi. That's right. A little bit this week, a little bit next week. So in this first episode with Fifi, we get into basically we get a little bit of her journey from being a performer, being a performance artist, and a circus performer, and then how that transition happened into burlesque. And you're going to want to listen in because she's got balls. I tell you, she's a brave little sucker. This one. So we talk about her journey that way and how what she's done and how that Irish burlesque scene has gone for her. And then we also really dive deep into this idea of failure because I am just super jealous of this young lady and her approach to failure. And I am going to keep it in my mind as a way I want to kind of change the way I approach it as much as I can do. So failure on stage and off stage. I love it. At one point she talks about, finding that joy in failure. And I just think it's so beautiful the way it's talked about. So that's kind of what we get into in this particular episode. And then in her second part, in part 2 of Fifi, which I'll get out to you next week, is a little bit more, we talk about kind of burlesque as escapism. I don't know if we're the first ones coining it, but we decided #Queminist. You're going to want to listen and find out a little more about that and what that is. We talk about affordable glamour. We have our typical rounds, of course, our pick your poison and our this and that section. It's slightly less than a quick fire round because, we like to talk a lot, her and I, so it's all good. So that's going to be up in next week's episode. But for this week, for the time being, I would love to just kind of jump right in. This is the first half of my interview with the Irish beauty herself, Fifi La Roux. Enjoy. That is right, my friends. I am super excited to have our very first Irish burlesque performer on the show today, Fifi La Roux. How are you, Fifi?
Yay, the gwitch, Tom Gama. I decided to start out with some Irish for you.
Damn, I am really happy about that. That is amazing. I find Irish like to be one of the most ridiculous languages, because I actually, for those of you listening who don't know, I actually lived in Ireland for about a year. And I just remember like I would read signs in Irish and I'd be like, try to sound it out, and then my Irish friends would just laugh at me because like it doesn't look anything like what it sounds like.
No, it doesn't. And like it's really funny because no one in Ireland can really speak it.
It's true.
Apart from, I'm insanely jealous of friends who are like, they've gone to Gael schools for all their life, which is an Irish speaking school, and they have it in their, like, just ingrained in them. But even when I'm trying to read Irish, I'm like, Neil, if a gum.
So, Fifi, you are Irish. You are coming to us from the Emerald Isle. How are things over on that side? Well, for me, that side of the ocean. Some of you, it's their same side of the ocean. Whatever. How are things going over there?
I think in terms of Ireland, things are actually going fantastic. The Irish scene is actually on fire right now. And it's making me really, really happy that I'm one of them.
Hey, that's so good. We heard a little bit about your bio. We've heard, that you have a history from, kind of circus and aerial performing, but kind of, maybe fill in some of those gaps from the bio. Let us know a little bit about the real Fifi that we can't just hear and read about on the website.
Oh, okay.
I know, it's a big question.
What is the real Fifi? So obviously from my bio, basically this is essentially my full-time life now.
That's amazing.
It's my life. Yeah. So I fell down the rabbit hole essentially in 2012, where I picked up the hula hoop at a music festival, and then I was just gone. And I've always been like an artistic person. I have my fine art, my BA in contemporary sculpture and the expanded practice. It's about 4 years of my life doing that. And then through that, I actually majored in contemporary sculpture, and from that it was performance art. So a lot of endurance pieces. So I was very much always doing something with my body. And then I found circus throughout that experience. And in 2012, I started hula hooping and I started aerial acrobatics. And then I went off in 2013 and I ran away with a circus, and I actually was touring the States, and I toured with the Kelly Miller Circus, which is a very traditional circus in the summer. And that was like an experience and a half. And then I came back to Ireland, and then I got a chance to go on my Erasmus. Basically, when I came back to Ireland, I knew that circus and performing was what I wanted to do with my life. And I was a bit like, I don't really want to do art right now. It's not really where my heart is. But I got the opportunity to go on Erasmus to Milan. So I went off to Milan, and then I went and started training in the circus spaces there. There was like Lab Quattro by Quattro and Piccolo Scudo de Circo. Probably did not say that right, so if there's any Italian listeners, I'm really sorry. So I spent about 6 months over there, and then I came back to Ireland, and I was like, yep, this is what I want to do with my life. I've just been like, when I was in Milan, I was just focusing on trapeze, and it made me insanely happy, and I felt like I was getting so much stronger. The college I went to was the Brera Academy, and they were just kind of like, oh, you're on Erasmus, you're on holidays. So I went off and did like 5 days of training a week, and it was so beautiful. And then I came back and didn't really want to push myself to go to fourth year, but I was also like, have my degree, just one more year of just pushing myself, and I'll have like a BA. Later found out that I can't really do anything with this degree, but I have it, so and then I essentially made my art studio, my little training studio, and I set up my silks, and I was working on my pole as well. So yeah, I set all that up in my studio because I was like, it's performance art. I can still do this. And at the time, I was really interested in endurance pieces because performance art were like a huge thing for me. And I loved the concept through training myself of the theory that the more you do something, the better you get at it. But in doing aerial, and you'll actually know yourself as well, the more you like do aerial in a class in one setting, say the more times you tuck under or something, you're actually going to get a little bit worse in that setting because you get more exhausted. Mm-hmm. So I started pushing my limits, and I did things like continual handstands until I physically couldn't do them anymore. And I think I lasted about 40 or 50 minutes for one.
Gosh.
And that was actually fantastic. That was in Milan. I had the second time I did it, I decided to put loads of flour on the ground because from chats that we had beforehand, as I was saying, I kind of love bruises, and I love the leftover imprints. They're like imprints on your body and your little kisses from the work that you've done. So I put flour on the ground, and I wore completely black, which is like, oh, why is she wearing black? Oh no, it's such a no thing at the moment. But yeah, so I wore completely black, so each time I fell, you could see the flour would like be imprinted on myself, and actually all pretty much ended up on my ass.
Wow, yeah.
So yeah, and then I went on from that, and then because I wanted to do circus in fourth year, I basically made my degree showpiece was me working on just one aerial move. It's a move that's like, it's called the hurricane or the windmill or like just a twirly thing. It's like, a helicopter as well. So yeah, you just slowly rotate down. And I decided for my degree showpiece that I was just going to continuously do it over and over and over again. And the piece was called Patience, because, it can get really frustrating if you can't get a move, and then you're constantly comparing yourself to other people who seem to be these amazing, perfectly, they can straddle up 20 feet in the air, and you're there like, oh, I can barely do a footlock. So yeah, it was called Patience, and it was just more me learning that I have to be patient with my own body, because everyone's different. I'm lucky in that I'm naturally strong, but I'm not flexible, so I have to work really hard on my own flexibility, and I need to focus myself on my flexibility. And then sometimes I can get lazy with my flexibility because it doesn't come naturally to me, so I obviously will work on pull-ups instead because they're easier, and that's being bold. So yeah, that's kind of where I went with it. And then through that, I decided to, at the end of it, because Ireland is such a small scene in the circus world, or in the performing arts world, or the arts world in general, actually, because Ireland is just such a small country, everyone does kind of know each other, and we don't like to admit it, but, there is a strong case that if you say, oh, do you know this person? We will know them. So, through that, the circus scene and the burlesque scene were always constantly passing each other, and it was just kind of like a natural path that I just turned to burlesque, and I just so happened to decide that my first burlesque gig would be Miss Burlesque Ireland, which is like the biggest burlesque competition in Ireland. And I was coming from a circus performer mindset, and I was being like, my first burlesque piece is up online and it's the most embarrassing thing ever, and I'm keeping it up there because I like to show people that, okay, yeah, this was my first burlesque act, and this is where I've gone, this is how far I've come in my little time, because I came from being a circus performer, and I will wholeheartedly admit to everyone that I was very cocky when I made that transition, and I thought that I was like the bee's knees, and then I went and I did burlesque. And I learned that burlesque is really fucking hard. Yeah. And then if something's hard for me, I kind of like to prove that I can do it. So after I had that experience of embarrassing myself on Ireland's biggest platform for burlesque, I was like, no, I need to go and do this. And I need to go and prove to people that, I can actually apply to myself and be a good performer. And then I just completely fell in love with the scene and what you do. And I realized that, burlesque is kind of, because I really enjoy telling a story with my routines. It's just so much freer, and in a way, to me at least, because I know everyone is different in how they perform, but for me, I found that it was a freer way to tell a story or to express myself on stage than circus had been. And again, that was just to do with a lot of learning, and I've happily been rekindling my love of circus because burlesque kind of took over for about a year. And then I've been rebringing myself back in and combining the two together. So yeah, I did Miss Burlesque Ireland in July 18th, 2015 is my burlesque birthday. Yeah, I have that date ingrained into me. And we have the leaving cert in Ireland. I don't know what that would be the equivalent to in the States.
Be like a diploma.
No, it's like, when you're in high school or something, and the exams that you do before you go into college.
Yeah, we don't really have specific exams. We have a standardized test that you can take to help with your scores, or to get a score to help you get into college. But we have a high school diploma that we get at the end of our high school. But
yeah, so it would be like that. And we would have flashbacks essentially of our leaving cert because it's such a huge pressure thing for someone at that age to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've learned that Miss Burlesque has turned into my leaving cert where I will have nightmares of doing the Miss Burlesque Ireland competition.
Oh my
and I'm
gosh.
like, it's been over for like a good few months now.
I find that amazing that you, you're brand new. I mean, you're obviously not a new performer at this point. You've been doing, circus and other performing for a long time, but that you were like, all right, I'm intrigued by burlesque, so I'm just going to do the biggest festival in the entire damn country because why not, And I think that just like, can you take us back to those months leading up to it? Like, what was your mindset? Like, or even that moment when you decided to do it? Was there even a thought of starting with a smaller stage first, or were you just like, no, I'm going to go big or go home?
I'm trying to think about what I was like. I think because I had seen the very first Miss Burlesque Ireland competition that was in 2014. And I remember being in the crowd. And I was also helping my friend, another performer, Cora L. And I was helping her backstage because it was a big thing for her because it was the first competition. And I remember just sitting in the crowd when I managed to have a break. From the whole thing, and actually being backstage as well was really, really interesting to see what the whole shenanigans and politics backstage were like in comparison to a circus show. So yeah, and then I sat in the crowd and I remember looking at the show and it was actually the classic section. And in Ireland, we generally really love neo performances. Is generally the favourite. We do have our classic performers and they're like actually fantastic. We have someone, Scarlett Van Tassel is a phenomenal classic performer. I mean, to me, she's the Irish queen of classic. And I will tell her that. And I'm like, you need to know how like freaking amazing you are because she just eludes the golden era. But yeah, I sat down and the classic whole section, because actually Miss Burlesque Ireland, you have like 4 rounds, which is the ball gown round where you come out and it's like your introduction to everybody. And then you have the classic round, which is, you have to do the golden era of burlesque, and you have to get your bumps and your grinds and your shimmies and quakes and X, Y, and Z in there. You got to do your homework and do your research. And the music has to be between the 1930s and 1965. Wow. And then you have your neo round, and it was like, telling the story and telling a party, X, Y, and Z. And then if you were successful, you would get into, essentially, the first 2 years it ran that was just on the same night. So you would only find out on the night if you were successful enough to do your unique. Oh, wow. And then this year we had a semi-final and a grand final because it's been such a big thing that it's actually like so fueled the Irish scene, and it's like ridiculously pushed the standard of performers. It's amazing. Azaria Starfire is the performer who brought it over, and I don't think she realizes how many people, well, she probably does, because like, as I said, the Irish scene is literally on fire, and she is one of the biggest reasons why for providing this competition for us. So yeah, I'm like grasshoppering right now. So,
no, that's okay. It's fascinating to hear about.
If you're successful then on the night, you'll go into the unique round, which is what burlesque means to you. So for me, I thought it was like this fantastic. First of all, I sat down on the stage and I was like, whoa, blown away by the classic round, which surprised me because I also had particularly enjoyed neo up until that point. And then I was just sat there and I was watching the performers and watching how all of their creativity just like escaped onto the stage and into the crowd. And I was just like, I want to be on that stage next year. And that's like where my deciding factor was. But then I was also really, really cocky, and I was also doing my degree show at the same time. And I think I only had like an actual month between finishing my degrry, like writing my thesis, and the actual big competition that I really should have just like, taken a break, properly applied myself. But at the same time, as we were saying before, I really enjoy learning through failure, and I do think that I failed royally. But it was what I needed. Like, I feel it was what I needed coming in, because it just completely changed my attitude to burlesque. Not that I didn't love it already, but it changed how I was myself, and it was a much needed reality check. And it made me realize that, I have to work really freaking hard, because it's not going to be something that comes easy to me. And then I decided that I wanted to go off and do it again this year. No, it would have been 2016. I don't even know what date it is anymore.
What year is it? I don't know what's happening. Yeah.
No, we're happily over 2016, but it was in 2016. And I wanted to kind of come back and prove to the audience that, this is how far I've come in a year, and I've taken this seriously because this is a very serious industry, and it's like an industry that I love, particularly because it's a female-led industry, whereas, in the circus scene, I would go to a few juggling conventions and sit on the stage, and quite regularly I'd sit through a whole show when there would be no female performer or only two female performers, and then I went from that world to a stage where, particularly in Ireland, we are currently deprived of male burlesque performers, so if there's any male burlesque performers who want to come over to Ireland, I have no problem with that. That being said, the male burlesque performers we have are freaking amazing as well. But yeah, so it was just my way of really, really focusing myself, and I learned what I needed to do. Also, between that journey, I took my neo. My neo routine was the Berta Venus, essentially. And it's because I like to call myself a feminist, and it was my way of, I would be, not to be all cocky again, but I can make myself into quite a conventionally attractive woman. And so I like to kind of challenge the norm of, okay, I look quite pretty, so I'm going to do a Berta Venus act that's inspired by Botticelli's Venus. And I can't do a Venus act without doing the song, "She's got it, baby, she's got it." But I also can't do that act and promote that you should shave, because I think if you want to have body hair, you should totally flaunt that body hair.
Right.
Shaved or unshaved legs are one of the happiest things. I just think they're really aesthetically pleasing. But yeah, so I go on. Yeah, and I go on, and I'm in. Oh yeah, I also realized that I couldn't do a Venus act without. I don't know if you had them over in the States, but there are these blue paddling pools that were in the shape of shells. So I don't know if you have them in the States.
Yeah, I think I can picture one of those. Yeah, like a little kiddie pool.
Yeah,
in that shape. Yeah,
I think almost every Irish household had one, and I was like, I cannot come off the shores of the sea without coming. I can't be in an actual clam. I have to be in the little paddling pool.
Yes,
so I come on in that little clam, and then I come out, and I'm all, oh, look at me, I'm Venus with my big flowy gown, and then I get into it, and then it's to Dee Dee Jackson's. Venus is a da-da-da-da. I'm not a singer. This is why I perform with my body and not with my voice. Yeah, so she comes on and she's singing, and then I do my reveal and I take off my big Grecian gown. That's probably not the right reference, but well. So I take off my gown.
Works for me.
And then I'm covered in hair, just like Botticelli's Venus. And the song stops, and there's the record scratch, and then I realize that, oh shit, I haven't shaved, and I look down and I'm covered in hair, and I run and I grab a giant razor, and then I go to shave myself, and I'm like, actually no, I don't want to shave myself. So I break the razor in half, and glitter comes everywhere because it's a burlesque act, and why not?
Burlesque, exactly.
Yeah. And then I just start to pull even more hair out of my armpits and out of my vajayjay. And then I just use that as a boa thing, and I'm like, yay! So that was my first.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's what I felt was my first real burlesque act, and from that, I happened to go on to the Belfast Burlesque Festival, which was I went for Miss Burlesque Ireland, and it was the first time going there, and that was one of my first game changers, because not only did I somehow freaking manage to place first, I won the best newcomer in the newcomer night.
Damn, girl.
Which I
nice.
have no idea how, because I had such a horrible week. That was the same week that my laptop was stolen, and my car had been written off that week, and I had to use my old music for the song because my laptop had been stolen with the new music on, and I didn't have enough time to re-edit it. And it was just one of those disaster days. And then when they called my name, there's actually a video of it somewhere, and I'm like, what? Are you sure? Yeah, so that was my first game changer, because on the Sunday night, on the Saturday night, they had the Belfast Crown as well, and it was an array of loads of international performers. But then on the Sunday night, I had the honor of getting to see Lily Lascala and Velma Bon Bon Bon, and it was the big show essentially, and I saw what the standard was and I was like, oh fuck. oh shit, oh God, what am I doing with my life? But it also made me be like, oh God, what am I doing with my life? I want to do that. So it pushed me and it motivated me. Then that routine also brought me to Hebden Bridge because I was shortlisted as a wild card for the Legends in the Making competition, which is their newcomer competition. And unfortunately, I didn't get the wild card, but the person who got it, Carmen Mia Moore, is a freaking fantastic performer, and her energy is just she's also a really lovely person, so I couldn't hate her for taking it because she was so lovely. She's one of those people that's like, why can't I hate you? You're too nice right now. You're talented and you're lovely. What are you doing to me? But then they invited me to come and perform at the Burlesque Bazaar, and I drove over in my little circus van, and I got to see the gala show, and I got to see the Legend in the Making show, which was their newcomer act, and like just the standard of the newcomers over in the UK. I was like, oh shit, I am a very small fish in a very big pond right now. And then I saw the gala show, and again, I got to see Velma again and Pearl Noir, and it was my first time experiencing Pearl Noir. Oh my God. Like, I so genuinely felt that she was just making eye contact with me.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, she's doing that with me. She's doing that with everybody in the room. But then I was like, oh no, she's probably making eye contact with Havana Hurricane because she was sitting right in front of me.
Oh, well, maybe.
But it was just her, like, actual power on the stage. And it was just so exhilarating and motivating. And that whole show itself, getting to see Kiki Lovechild perform as well and do his butterfly act, was just that was like literally my game changer, which made me literally go, okay, this isn't just something that I just want to do. This is something that I need to do, and this is something that like I have to do this for my full-time career. And then I went off, and with that motivation, I started working pretty much from that April up until the next year on my Miss Burlesque Ireland routines. And I did very well, like shockingly well. I got through to the grand final because I was one of the judges' top 5, and I felt like, unfortunately, I didn't place, but the people who did place obviously was well deserved. But it was just more for myself that I made it to the grand final. That's amazing. Yeah, I got a standing ovation with my unique routine, which was also a fun story. I was meant to do an aerial routine for my unique, but unfortunately we learned like 4 or 3 weeks before the show that aerial wasn't actually happening, and it wasn't even that it was confirmed. It was a very tricky venue, and I was just kind of like, look, I need to have this decided now. Are we going to do aerial? Are we going to wait another 2 weeks to see if it's going to happen, or will we just not do aerial? And there was 3 of us all together, and we decided not to do aerial. So I wasn't like the only person in that boat. But then I had to like throw together this whole new routine in 3 weeks, and I was like, oh shit! Like my forte is comedy. That's what my strengths are in. What am I gonna do? And I just completely peeled myself back. And I have my band, or not my band. They're my favorite band, but they're not my band. The Irrepressibles, and I had a song that I really wanted to do to them, and I was completely serious, and not what Fifi normally does. And it was also to a hoop routine, and I'd never really performed hula hooping to anybody, because hula hooping was like my baby that I keep to myself. And it was also, we have like a fantastic burlesque hooper, Sheer Madness, on the scene, and I didn't want to hoop to the Irish scene because, again, it's such a small scene that there was that pressure of, oh, am I going to be like, are they going to see me as Fifi La Roux doing hooping, or are they going to see me as Fifi La Roux does Sheer Madness? So there was all of that like worry and stress about whether I could actually like do a hoop routine. And thankfully throughout this whole process, I had like some really fantastic people. One of my best friends, Valkyrie Von Storm, was just there to like help me moan, but also like my dance mom, Tom Riddle, from the Big Spender Boys. He like was such an amazing rock, and he helped me choreograph my routines, and he was just like, I would not be at the standard, not that I'm at a standard now, but I wouldn't be where I am now if it wasn't for that person. And I don't think he actually realizes how much I appreciate like all the help that he gave me, because he was there up until like 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I get messages on my Facebook, and they were just ideas of what I should do in my acts, and I'm like, I'm not even paying you right now. And then Azaria Starfire as well, again, because she brought the show, and she also gave me one-on-ones, and she was helping me with that routine. And then it was all that worrying came to me essentially doing the routine that whenever I'm having like a shitty day, because I do live with depression, and that's something that I'll be very vocal about because I don't believe in not talking about mental health.
Absolutely.
But if I do have one of those really down days, I'll watch that video, and it makes me go, this is what I've made in 3 weeks. This is what I can do. It got a standing ovation, and it makes me really happy. And the whole piece itself is how essentially finding burlesque and performing has brought out my own confidence. And I know everyone says it, but that's because that's what burlesque does.
That's what it does, absolutely.
It's such a platform that's there, and it's helped so many people. It's brought so many people from the brink of life. It's also like made so many people so much bigger than they ever thought they would be. And it's just such a beautiful thing, and it's such a strong thing in the Irish scene as well, because we're all like a huge big family. That's my journey. Actually, no, it's not my journey. I've kept on going, but I might just cut it there.
No, that's absolutely amazing. There's so many things I love about the elements of your journey. I love what you said just now about, having that support system, because I think that's so, so important. And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with, especially if they're in communities that aren't necessarily as strong. I've talked with people before about like finding your burlesque soulmate or mates, and just finding those people that just really lift you up, which can be a challenge. And so that's something I've been wanting to get into more here on the podcast, maybe have a whole month on talking about that or something. But really what I just like am captivated by you about is your approach to failure. And I just love this mentality. I mean, that's kind of what drove you, it seems, to just start big, start with Miss Burlesque Ireland and just go for it. And this idea that, instead of, even if you did make a fool of yourself, which I highly doubt you did, but even if you did, instead of have that causing you to shy away from burlesque, that gives you motivation to turn around and prove everybody wrong and come back from that. And I just find that because that's very different from how I approach things. I mean, not intentionally, I want to be more like you, but, like kind of my internal thing is to more like, if I don't do something well, fairly early on, it kind of makes me want to go away from it. And so I'm just super, like I said, captivated by this, this characteristic in you. And I'd love for you to speak a little bit more about that idea of failure and what part that plays in your life. Yeah,
I'm actually trying to think about where it came from. Because as I said to you earlier on, I really love to fail.
Yeah. And I just think that's so fascinating, because I hate to fail. Like, it's the worst thing in the world to me, and not consciously, not in, in my brain, but just like this, I have this like visceral reaction to failure. I don't like to be bad at things.
Yeah.
And so I love that you, and I wish I was more like you in that respect.
I think like a big part of it has come from, because I do a good bit of clowning, and I like to consider myself a clown, even though I have a lot of learning still to do. Sure. But it's also just the idea of it's how you learn, is just to be able to accept that. And I think bringing it back to my own mental health and living with depression, I understand for myself that when I stop doing stuff, it's when it gets the hardest. So to constantly do it, it's a funny dynamic. So I can't really afford to give myself days off. So when I give myself a day off, it's a day where I'm making costumes for myself as opposed to making costumes for somebody else or something like that. Like actual days off are torture for me, because then that's when all of the negative chemicals come into my head. So I think that's like somehow had an impact where, rather than letting something fail on stage, or like as I had told you beforehand, before our interview we had the chats, and I have this clown pop routine, which I come on celebrating my love of clowns, as well as celebrating my love for balloon animals, because I'm a professional balloon modeler as well. So cool. And I really wanted to do a balloon pop routine, but I didn't want to do a traditional balloon pop routine. And this routine is like, it's mad. Like it's my routine that when it's been booked, I'm always like, are you sure you want this routine? Because it's mad. I did it last Friday at like kind of an afternoon thing, and it was the first act on, and I was like, are you sure that this is the routine you want to open up the show with? So I come on, and I'm kind of like a scary clown, because it also came into existence around October when all of the scary clowns were happening, which also that happens every October. That wasn't a new phenomenon. I'm sorry. I was like, guys, it happens every year. Stop being mean to clowns. So I kind of wanted to like have it as my way of like, you know, scary clowns are people too. So I have my big crazy grin, and it's like the first song is like, it's a dubstep version or reenactment of Pop Goes the Weasel. And I come on, and if I have the space in the venue, I come on in a mini bike, and if I don't, I kind of creep on through the crowd, and I just smile, and then there's like a beat, and every beat I kind of like death stare one person in particular, because eye contact is such a huge thing, and at that particular time I was playing with eye contact with the audience in like just in my rehearsals and that, so I was like, why don't I just do extreme eye contact with everyone in the room, because it's also a scary clown, so I'm just gonna stare the hell out of you. So yeah, then that happens, and then I take off my big clown pants, and I'm covered in all of my balloon animals. And because it's me, and because I really, really love balloons, I just get extremely excited and extremely hyper, and I start bursting the balloons, and I'm like, oh my god, I've got so many balloons on me, I'm so freaking happy right now, and I start bursting them all. And then I burst the very, very last one, and I'm essentially like a toddler, because it's actually how I'm feeling at that particular time and moment where I burst all my balloons. So I realized that I burst them all, and I start crying, because I'm like, I burst all my balloons, and I just wanted to play, but they're all gone, and now I can't play. And then like it's a full on sob, and I pick someone out in the crowd, and I go sit on them, and I sob into their shoulder and hold their hand, because I love audience interaction, especially when I'm a big giant clown. And you know, after doing 4 years of sculpture and having learned how to build things, I had made this structure, which was like a base that I built up big balloons, 360s, which are the bigger balloons, to make a giant balloon dog. And the structure was so that in rehearsal I would stand on it and like do proper choreo, because when the giant dog comes on, 99 Red Balloons starts to play, and I stop crying, and I'm like, oh yay, I'm really, really happy. There's a big giant balloon on the stage. And I like get onto it, and I straddle that bad boy, and I ride that bad boy. And in rehearsals I was able to stand on it, and it was kind of like the first part of, ideally I wanted to make like a big fiberglass 3D. I can't actually remember the artist, but he had, you know, the big giant 3D fiberglass models of balloon dogs. So I kind of wanted to make one of those. So this structure was going to be the first base to, you know, progress as I go on. And it worked perfectly well in rehearsals, and everything was fine and dandy, and then I went to do it on stage, and I was obviously so filled with adrenaline that I jumped onto it, and I think I jumped twice, and it snapped in half, and all of my choreography went out the window, and I was like, oh, fuck, okay, I still have to go. And then, like, what's happened was, because I failed, and I failed spectacularly, I quite literally failed in that I broke my prop, and I can do what I had choreographed to do. But it's just so important to realize that, you know, it's a live performance, and there's like the fourth wall isn't there, and the audience are with you. And when you go onto that stage, the audience are always going to be with you. So if you get caught in the corset, or if something happens, you slip or something, they don't like being lied to. And they know when something's gone. So, you know, obviously not breaking character is key, but also acknowledging what just happened is totally okay. And in a way, it makes them like you even more, because they're like, okay, yeah, that's happened. And I actually can't remember the performer who did it, where she got stuck in her corset. And rather than like panicking, she walked to the edge of the stage, and she got one of the stagehands to untie her and said, and it was just that control that she had. Where, yeah, she failed, but she still had it, and the audience were like, fuck yes, that's like freaking badass right now. So yeah, that was like my little glamorous moment of getting stuck in the corset, was when I broke my giant prop. And I now keep it in the routine, because it actually worked so much better than what I had rehearsed, and people enjoyed it so much more. I basically, instead of straddling the giant balloon dog and then taking off my bra and everything, I started to burst the balloon dog again, and I just completely destroyed the balloon dog, because, you know, it was started as a balloon pop routine, so why not finish it as a balloon pop routine? And that's like it. And it's a key part in, like, I think just learning and being genuine on the stage. Because, you know, each performance is going to be entirely different to the next performance. And it's like, I teach the clowning workshop myself. It's essentially a new one because I've been brave to do it. And I've been bringing it to like Wales and everything. And it's particularly aimed at burlesque performers or the burlesque scene as an introduction to clowning, because I do also think, so for me, one of the things that drew me to burlesque, not only was it because the worlds were so small and they kind of crossed over so many times between circus and burlesque, but I always considered burlesque to be another form of clowning, because burlesque is another hyper extension of yourself. So for me, there was always that like, oh, it's just another clown. It's just another like chance for me to get out there and be silly and to fail and like just to be happy and to go out and do what I love. So like through that, it's just essentially learning to find the joy in failure. Because it also came from, because I didn't just like decide to jump into the deep end. I also decided to like go to every single burlesque show that I could afford to go to. Like go to all the bigger ones and go to all the smaller ones, get to meet everybody in the community and support the scene as well, because that's how you help it grow. And then from seeing that and seeing some of the newer performers on the stage who might get stuck in a costume, and then just seeing them just get really, really angry at their costume. And it's a really, really frustrating feeling as an audience member to see that happen on stage, and you want them to do well, because you're always going to want them to do well unless they're like an absolute prick to you on stage. So it was just seeing that, and I felt like for me was one of my strengths coming into it, was learning that it's okay to essentially be a fool, and it's okay to be ridiculous, and it's okay to be silly, and you kind of need to just learn to be silly, particularly if you're doing burlesque, and particularly if you're doing something as vulnerable as like bearing yourself quite literally all on stage. So I wanted to bring it to like just to introduce people, because I do feel that clowning and burlesque complement each other so much, and to introduce performers or audience members or, you know, just fans with the concept that it's okay if something goes wrong on stage. It will be okay. Don't panic.
Yeah, don't panic. Hashtag don't panic. I think that's so important. I think I've seen as you have, you know, so many, especially newer performers, but even some established performers who, you know, aren't used to, they're used to having this perfectly choreographed routine, and then something goes wrong, and that moment of panic in their eyes. So it's a super important skill for us to have as performers. Yeah. And I think what's also super important is that we learn how to translate that into our everyday lives. And I think that that's something that burlesque can give us, as well as, you know, I mean, you and I talked about this, about, you know, how burlesque kind of, you know, makes you more confident in your body and this and that. And a lot of people talk about that, but I think what people don't necessarily talk about is this ability, or this idea that burlesque helps us to learn how to deal with failure, to learn how to deal, you know, how to be silly, how to let go of that control a little bit, especially for people like me who are like super hard control freaks, right?
Like I'm quite a control freak as well. Like it's been a fun thing traveling a lot lately, because I've been doing a lot more gigs in the UK. Has been a fun thing that I need to learn, because when I get stressed, I'm quite pedantic in terms of organizations, and everything just needs to be okay, because if I get stressed, I'll get stomach ulcers. It's another reason I can't wear corsets, which is so freaking annoying. Just because when it's really, really tight, it aggravates it. So, you know, I'm quite a control freak as well. But at the same time, I think you just need to just be okay with it. Like, if you ever are on my Instagram, one of the funnier times, because I will always post my failures on Instagram, because I also think it's just good to know, because I am an aerialist. And people are always like, oh my God, that's so cool, I could never do it. And I'm like, no, you can. Literally, you can do it.
I can attest to that. Yeah. It is hard as shit. I had my third aerial class this morning, and I was awful, but I was able to pull myself up a couple times, which is a couple more times than last time. And I took that, you know, I took a video and I put it on Instagram, and I told you, Fifi, like, I didn't want, like, there was a part of me that was like, no, I should just keep this video just for my own thing. But then I'm like, no, I talk all the time about being authentic and showing this kind of stuff. Like, I need to like put that out there, and I need to show that because I so respect it when other people do it. Why can't I do it my damn self?
Yeah.
So that was a big moment for me. And I think that's awesome that you do that on a more regular basis.
And I think what you, because as I said before, I was perving on your Instagram, and what you said in your comment thing was that something that I'm like, oh my God, yes, that is the key, was I think is like, I did it, but more importantly, I still went. That was it?
Right.
Yeah, you went.
Right. It was like, yeah, I was saying, I'm like, I'm not graceful. I am not strong. I am not skilled at this, but I'm showing up.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm there.
And like, I know myself, just because I got really self-conscious about it. Actually, it's been a fun little demon of mine recently, particularly when it comes to aerial, because I haven't been training as much as I used to, because I decided to go full time as a artist and a performer last May, and I learned that going full time means that I have €1 pizza for dinner every night, and that I can't afford to go to my classes anymore. So unfortunately, and it's also that like literally to stay alive, you just have to work really hard. So I would go about a month or two without training. And you'll see this yourself, that once, you go a while without training, you'll find that you've lost strength. And it's the most like, I don't know, crippling feeling. And it's just a horrible feeling when it's actually happened. Because you feel quite defeated. And you're like, no, I can do this, like I can do this move. I've done it before. But physically your body can't do it. And it became quite a habit that I would go with these big breaks. And you'll gain your muscle as quickly as you lose it. And it's just something that you need to remind yourself. And I think that's also how I've learned to enjoy failure, was every time I'd be like coming back to aerial, because I'd have a gig in a month and I'd have to really work at getting up to the strength I needed to get at. And the first 2 weeks was torture because I wasn't able to invert in straight leg or X, Y, and Z. And I was always comparing myself. One of the things that I'm really bad at doing is comparing myself to my peers who started doing aerial at the same time that I started doing aerial, and they're so much better technique-wise and skill-wise than I am. And I just like got really into comparing myself to them. And then this winter, I got like a dream residency in the Irish Aerial Creation Centre, where I got to work with Fidget Feet, which is like the Maca of aerial in Ireland. They're like, essentially like the founders of aerial, and they're this fantastic company that's run by Chantel McCormick and Jim Daly, and they were people who I've wanted to meet for ages. And unfortunately, like, they do the Irish Aerial Dance Festival, which happens every year in Letterkenny, and this is like a 2-week festival of training 9 to 5. If you have the chance, you should 100% come over and do it. Even at your level now, there's like beginner classes, and it's literally like, I'm giving up BHOF to go to this, because I was going to go to BHOF, and I was like, no, I have to go to this, because it just ups your skill, and it's basically master classes. So that's what I'm doing this year, and I'm breaking my neck because I'm like, I have to go and frickin' do it. But at the winter residency, the Irish Aerial Creative Intensive, I think that's what it's called, I had the opportunity to meet these people, who I like extremely respect and look up to, and they're some of my inspirations, because Chantal has created this huge empire of aerialists within Ireland, and she's just a genuine person. And we had a few moments where, I get stuck into comparing myself with other people, because I wasn't at the highest skill level. I do, thankfully, I'm quite a creative person, so that's where I was like, okay, I might not be so skilled there at the moment, but that's just strength and flexibility. I can get there, but at the same time, you kind of sometimes can't help but listen to your demons. And then I had her say, we had like little honesty moments, and she just admitted to, being worried that people will find out that she's a phony. And I was like, what? How can you say this? You have an empire. You were like the queen of aerial. You're like the aerial mum in Ireland. What are you doing? But for me, it was one of those really honest moments where she's afraid of people realizing that she's not this queen. And I also had that moment as well because I had also done an intensive with Armitage Shanks the weeks beforehand, and that was a 3-day learning to perform with emotion thing where he also said that he was afraid that people will realize that he was a phony. And it was literally like I had these two really big people with really big names say exactly how I was feeling, and I was like, no, how can you guys feel what I'm feeling right now? That doesn't make sense, but it's also so validating.
Oh my God, yes. I mean, you should see me. I'm like nodding vigorously right now. Like this is like the biggest thing. And I think one of the reasons I'm so like obsessed with it is that I still suffer from it so much. I mean, I think we all do, but you know, that imposter syndrome. I did an episode on that back in Authenticity Month, back at the end of, I don't even know when it was, 2015, like in my first few months of podcasting. And I keep talking about it. It keeps coming up with people, you know, with guest after guest, and because it's there, and it's there for even these people that you wouldn't expect it to be there. You know, they talk about like, I think like Tom Hanks talks about it. Yeah. You know, I'm like, you're fucking Tom Hanks. Like you are not an imposter. Trust me, you're fine.
You've quite literally like overmade it. Like you haven't even made it. You've gone by it.
Yeah, you're past that. Yeah, you're good. No worries. But like, you know, but you can't help it. It's that internal thing. And I just think it's so fascinating. And so it's so important. You know, we may not be able to internalize it like completely because those feelings still come up, but it's so important to remember that we're not alone in that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's just been a huge one because it's been something where, because I'm not going to the same classes that I used to be going, I went from my aerial family, and I also lived the case where I am, because being a full-time performer is like such a good money investment. I have to live at home with my parents to try and do this.
Yeah, some sarcasm there, I think. Yeah.
But like, because I'm still living at home, because I just cannot afford to live in an apartment because rent in Dublin is a joke. I live an hour away from everybody, and then I'm not going to the same classes, so I end up feeling really alone because I'm just way out here in the countryside, which is also kind of a nice thing at the same time because I have like nice tranquility. But it means that I end up listening to my gremlins, is what I call them, because they're the little voices who are like, oh, you're not like this person. And you'll see people posting online the tricks that they do really well. And for me, I found that I was comparing myself to those tricks and comparing myself to those people. And Chantal, when we were finishing the intensive, she said something to me where she was just like, you're not alone. And she's just a person who just gets every single person. And she ended up just making me sob. And I was like, how do you know how I'm feeling? But then I think I realized that I was comparing myself to Instagram 15-second videos of someone doing a move like straight leg, splits, over splits, XYZ. And I was like, well, okay, I feel this way when I see these. I shouldn't feel this way. But also, because I feel this way, I kind of want to post all of my failures for anyone who might feel this way as well. Because I've had some people come up to me and they're like, oh, you're doing really, really well right now. And I'm like, what? What are you on about? I don't know what you're talking about. I can barely afford a loaf of bread right now. But yeah, so I think just like that honest moment for myself, because also, you know, it's nice to acknowledge that failing is the first attempt of learning.
Yes.
And it takes a while to get a move. And I also like throwing people off as well. So for my Miss Burlesque unique hoop routine, I was posting all of my training videos, but I was posting all of my failing videos. And then some people came up to me after the night and they're like, I was actually really worried about your hoop routine because you were just posting these pictures of you like missing every throw. And I was like, oh God, she's not going to do it. And then you did that. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, oh yeah, that's totally not a tactic.
I feel like they do that on like the first thing I think of is Dancing with the Stars, because I feel like they totally do that in their montages on Dancing with the Stars. They'll like show you how like they kept messing up the whole time, you know, every routine, like they couldn't get this thing, and then they get it perfectly when they're on stage, and it's like ha ha ha. But they probably did it quite a few times in rehearsal quite well as well. But I just love that. I think, I mean, of course, it's important to post when we get something, you know, and have that kind of support and like, you know, like, yay, look at me, I did this right. You know, like the good stuff, like we want to have that too. Nobody wants like all failure all the time. But I think that the whole collective like mentality of burlesque and art and life in general would be better if we all acknowledged and celebrated those failures as well. So thank you. I mean, I'm super inspired by everything that you're talking about. And so I'm gonna be remembering you as I post more and more of my failure shit. I'm gonna like tag you and like everyone on Instagram. Like, look at me, I'm failing. Look at me.
It's also the really small things as well. Like the fact that you went to cast and you were like, yeah, I'm not like these other people, but I'm here. Like, those are huge things. So about 2 years ago, I broke my nose with some fun. I used to do partner acrobatics, and now I don't do partner acrobatics, and I have extreme trust issues because I broke my nose. I was doing a 2-person tier with a friend, and there was loads of crash mats behind us, and they thought it'd be a funny idea to kind of jolt backwards and make me fall into the crash mats because there was a lot of crash mats. But at the same time, you did the key thing that you're not meant to do with acro, which is not communicate. So when they jolted backwards, I went to steady myself, fell face first, and as I fell, they got a shock, and they like brought their knee up, and I went face first into their knee, and I broke my nose, and had a nose cast for my 21st birthday.
Oh no! So, I'm cringing just hearing about that.
It took a while, and I remember like the bit that I remember the most, because I kind of don't remember the actual breaking. I just remember standing and then being on the ground. But the bit that I remember the most was I was just holding my nose, and then they were like, "It's okay, it's okay, it's okay." And then I took my hands away from my nose because I was covering my nose, and they were like, "Oh shit." No, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. And I had that moment of like, oh, okay, something's not okay there.
Maybe it's not okay.
Yeah. So I got into aerial because I was afraid of heights. I still am afraid of heights, but at the start of aerial, I was this really like invincible. I can do straddles up 30 feet in the air. I can do this, look at me go. I can do drops, X, Y, and Z. Then I broke my nose, and I learned that I am a human, and I can break. And it's bad. So I became, it was like quite literally, and I'm totally aware that it's just a psychological worry. Because aerial is different. I'm sure if you're afraid of heights yourself, you know that it's literally you're in control, and it's a whole different feeling. So like, you know, I can't climb up a ladder and I can't walk along a rope bridge, but I can go 30 feet up in the air, but I can't straddle 30 feet in the air and do catchers on the silks,
right?
Where you just invert and then you hocks on a leg and then you wrap your silks around you. But I couldn't do that for up until like this winter. I couldn't do it without giving myself a panic attack. And it's like one of the first things you'll learn once you've like started getting off the ground from the basics. And it's such a simple move. And then the first day I got it, I posted it online because that was a really big fucking achievement for me. And I was like, yeah, this is something really, really simple to all of my peers, but I've done it. I've overcome something that I'm afraid of. Still gives me a panic attack, but I can do it now. And I'm going to acknowledge the fact that even though it's something small, I'm there. I can do it, and it's fucking awesome.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's so important for us, you know, with everything, you know, with things like aerial, and then like just with our lives in general, you know, these smaller things, they, you know, and that cycles back to this idea of comparing too. You know, when we compare, we're like, oh, well, that's not a big deal to this person. But if it's a big fucking deal to you, it's a big deal to you, you know? And all those things should all be celebrated.
Like, I think it's a really big thing of learning empathy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to think that someone is in a worse position than you, because all of our, like, everything that involves around your life makes you experience things differently. So you might break a nail and it would be fine, but your friend might break a nail and they'll be in tears. And that doesn't mean that them breaking their nail isn't valid, because it's hurt them and they are crying for a reason, and that's okay.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. Yeah. Especially I think with, you know, the current social and a lot of political climates and things. I've been floored by this idea that like, I don't experience that, so it must not exist. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, have we lost the ability to listen to other people and listen and validate their experience, even if it's different from our own? Apparently, a lot of us have lost that ability. I find it baffling.
My partner, actually, we had this conversation last time I was in London, because I also like doing things difficult, so I have a partner who lives long distance.
Okay.
You know, I don't like things in my life to be easy.
You're like a masochist, aren't you, at heart?
Maybe.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that.
You know,
the bruises, all of this.
But yeah, so they were having this conversation about me, about how they were like completely baffled that there's like 26 genders or something now. And I was like, no, but like, here's the thing. That's like saying, like, he couldn't understand it because obviously he's never had to experience that. He hasn't learned it that way. And I was just like, that's exactly to me, because I don't like to say that I suffer with depression or anything like that. I live with depression because I've had it all of my life.
Right.
And, you know, it's not something that I can't, like, I have my own ritual and it's grand. But it's like, for me, I can't understand how there's people in their life who've gone through their whole life without depression and how they haven't experienced it. So I can't understand that. But there is people. So in my head, I'm like, that's how, you know, you haven't experienced this one thing, but you've experienced this other thing. So it's like saying, where am I going with this? Am I making sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it makes me think of, like, for example, when I first started talking with people, like, this was years ago, but like when I first started realizing that not just, I mean, I knew that some people were transgender. I knew that some people didn't identify. I knew all of these things, but like the pronouns, right? Like this, and again, this was several years ago. And like, I vividly remember talking with someone who identified, I believe at the time, as genderqueer, and talking about this idea of pronouns. And it was actually bathrooms, like that we were talking about, which is funny that now, not funny at all, ridiculous that now it's still a debate in America, because this was, again, at least 5 years ago, if not more, that they and I were talking about this. But like, we were talking about pronouns, and as someone who, you know, is an English teacher and is very, you know, I pride myself on using language well, especially written. It was really hard for me because I was like, no, they is not a singular pronoun. Like, it's not. I mean, it has some historical value as a singular pronoun, yes, and Disclaimer, that is not how I feel right now. I am okay. You don't need to send me emails lecturing me. I get it now. But at the time, this was my thought process. But I remember thinking like, okay, but so what? It doesn't inconvenience me that much, even though I don't understand it. I don't understand the feeling behind it, or like using the bathroom. Like, I don't really understand why it's a problem at the time, like to go into a different bathroom, or, you know, especially if you present in one way but identify as another, you know, I didn't get it, but that didn't matter because I don't expect to I don't expect to be able to feel what you feel, but I can like logically understand it. I don't know if that makes sense either. I feel like I'm not really coherently explaining this either, but you know?
I do get you. Like, at the time, it just wasn't, because it wasn't something you experienced. It wasn't something that was like a priority or something you could like empathize with.
Right. It wasn't something I could feel, but it was something I could still like logically get my head around and still back. I'm like, okay, so I don't understand this need to be they, but that doesn't matter if I don't feel that need. I acknowledge your need for that, and it does not inconvenience me that much to change the word that I use.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, if it's just changing a word and in the end you're respecting somebody out of it, and you're quite literally doing the opposite of hurting somebody.
Exactly.
Like, why is it such a problem for some people?
Right. Like, I would rather not hurt someone if I can avoid it, you know? And even to this day, I still, you know, I struggle with, you know, encouraging the binary and using the right pronouns and stuff. And, you know, I'm trying to be better. Like, that's all that we can say.
Yeah.
But, you know, to bring it back around again, just to like reinforce, like, the whole idea is being able to understand that other people are in different places, and not everybody thinks the way you do, and not everybody feels the way you do. And that sounds so cliche and so like, well, duh, that's the case. But apparently a lot of people can't wrap their heads around that.
Yeah. It does still baffle me, but at the same time, we do need to be patient with people as well.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because here I am like judging people for not being able to, you know, like here I am doing the very thing, you know, I'm like not understanding their mentality to not be able to understand me. So you're right. Yeah, there is an element of that as well.
One of my sister's friends grew up and then they started to identify as non-binary throughout their teenage life, and then they came out as being trans, and they started their process. And my parents have like had they've been trying really hard to make sure, even just changing the name. And it was something like so ingrained in them to change, to like call them by the name that they had grown up and like knew them for like 13 years of their life for. But it's even little things like, I don't like people calling me by my birth name, because that's not my name. It's not how I identify as. And that's nowhere near the same as identifying your gender. But at the same time, for me, it's a huge part of who I am. But I need to have patience with my parents, because they are the people who gave me the original name. And whereas I have my negative connotations with that name, I still need to be okay with them learning.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel like I can't really talk about this though, because I'm a very, very, in a privileged position essentially.
No, but it's so true. We have to, find that balance. For me, it's all about like if someone seems like they're at least trying, or at least like interested in trying or in seeing a different point of view, like then I'm like, all right, it's cool,
Interested in learning as well.
Exactly.
That's such a huge thing. Like, don't just be like, well, no, it should be this way. It should be like, if someone calls you out for something, don't be like, well, I'm sorry you got offended. Be like, okay, well, how can I learn from this experience?
Right. Like, let's talk about this. Exactly. It's a discourse. It's a dialogue. I just had this actually just this morning on like right before I went into my aerial class. I was like kind of in a bad mood. Like I made the mistake. Don't comment on Facebook. Like, don't do it. Like, and I just made the mistake of entering in this conversation but I won't tell the whole story, but basically what bothered me the most is that these people, even though I agree with their point of view, they're just completely shutting down the people who have different points of view.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, can we just have a dialogue about this? Can we help him to understand? Because of course it was a man that they didn't agree with, It was, and to be fair, he was mansplaining just a little bit. He was doing it, but he also had kind of a point, like not a very good point, but there was some gem of something in what he was saying, but they were just unwilling to see that because he was mansplaining and because, he was wrong. So anyway, long story short, yes, people just fucking be nice to each other. All right. And we're going to leave it there today. So that was kind of, like I said, a little, a lot of it into her journey, as well as that deep dive into failure. And I just got so much out of that. I wanted to leave it there for you today so you really have some time to absorb that. Be sure to come back to us next week for the continuation, kind of the finale of Fifi's interview, where we get into a whole lot more about the Irish burlesque scene, about burlesque as escapism, as I mentioned, #Queminist, as well as our, fun pick your poison and this or that round. In the meantime, be sure to be sharing these episodes with all your friends and your enemies too. They deserve good podcast episodes too. I almost said podcasts. Like, what am I, from Wisconsin? The podcasts? Yes, I am from Wisconsin, but I have mostly lost my accent, except for when I get drunk. Anyway, I digress. So share this episode with your friends. If you would like to support and get some free perks while you're at it over on Patreon, you can support us as little as $1 a month. It's a huge help in allowing us to get these podcasts out to you every week or every 2 weeks, as we've been doing. So that's burlesquestripdown.com/support. And if you would like to donate your time and join the team and help us out with some of our behind-the-scenes endeavors, you can do that at burlesquestripdown.com/join-the-posse. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I will see you again next week with part 2 of Fifi's interview. Until then, my friends, make sure that you stay sexy.